This is our next story. This is from the Marquesas. It's not from Raiatea, it's not from Tuamatus, but this story's got a connection with the Tuamatu Islands. In the island of Hivaoa, there's this one place in the western end of the island called Ahau. And it's near to a valley called Hanamenu. And there was this tribe that used to live there called the Piina. And the Piina tribe had lived there for a very, very long time. Some said since the time that Solomon built his temple. And in about 1800, the Piina, they had a problem. Each year, there were fewer and fewer of them. And that's because they were being eaten. There was this enemy tribe. Sometimes somebody would go gather shellfish at night and not come back. Or a man would go out there and go fishing in the dark. And then, here would come a canoe with 10 paddlers, all strong men. They would come upon the man suddenly before he could run, and they would take the man, tie him up, take him back to their valley, strangle him in the morning, cook him, and eat him. So fewer and fewer of them. There were fewer and fewer of them. And they were thinking, what do we do? They had two choices. They could go to war against their enemies. They'd be outnumbered, they would lose. But it's better to go to war, rather to be killed in a war rather than just waiting for them to come get you. The other choice was they could make canoes, sail away, look for a new land to live. But the risk was they didn't find land, they'd run out of water, and they would die, them and their little children. So there's two hard decisions. And to make up their mind, they sent their tawa, their tribal prophet, up into the mountains to talk, to commune with the ancestral spirits, to see what they, to get the word from them. And so the tawa, he went up the mountain, up the valley or into the mountains, and after 3 days, he came back. And he said, the ancestral spirits say that we have to make canoes and we have to leave. Go look for a new land. So the Piina people started to make canoes. They wanted to make, I think, 7 canoes or 6. And they did their work in secret because, of course, they didn't want their enemies to find out, because if the enemy found out, then they'd come and break the canoes because food's getting away. And so they worked in secret, and they finished off their canoes. And at that point in time, the chief's daughter was pregnant, and she was expecting a child. And it was going to be any day she was going to bear, because they didn't want to leave until she had had her child. I think there was like certain rituals in ancient times that they'd have to do. I think one of the rituals was they'd take the baby up in the mountains and they'd sprinkle the water from the dew into the baby's face. Kind of like committing the child to the land. The placenta had to be buried. They wanted to bury the placenta. Maybe they wanted to establish that child on Hivaoa by planting the pufenua, the placenta, on Hivaoa. But they were waiting for this woman to give birth. And it didn't come she didn't bear as soon as they expected. And the Piina people were really worried that their enemies would find out. And they were so worried, they finally said, we can't wait. And so what they did was, one canoe would stay behind until that woman gave birth. And then the rest of the tribe would go in the 5 or 6 canoes that they got. And they would just sail off. And then the last canoe, when the woman gave birth, they would leave and follow after the first group, wherever they had gone. And who's to say? Maybe the last day there they danced to say goodbye to their valley, their place, and to say hello to the new land that they would find. And then they set off. And when they were sailing near the enemy's valley, they were offshore from the enemy valley, the Piina people on their canoes, they beat their drums and they blew their horns. And the enemies, they heard the sound out in the sea and they came running down. It was like, is it somebody coming to fight? Is it somebody coming to eat? Is it a friendly visit? Is it a war? What? So they come running down to the beach And they call out there, and they're the Piina people, and they say, they called out to the Piina people, what's going on? And the Piina people in their canoes, they said, we're leaving. We're going to go look for a new land to live. And the enemies, they stood there on the beach, and they thought, and they remembered. Because the Piina people, there were a lot of women from the Piina who had married into the enemy tribes. So the enemy was related to the Piina. And in war, although the Piina people were fewer, they fought really hard. It's good to have strong enemies. And the enemies, they stood there on the beach, and they mourned that the Piina people were going. And they called to them, don't go, we won't eat you anymore. We're sorry. And the Piina people said, we understand, but our tribal spirits have told us we have to go and look for new land. And the enemies, they stood there on the beach, and they wept to see the Piina people go. They were so sad to see them go. And the Piina people said, Apai, ehe e maato. You sit, we will go. And the Piina people, they sailed away, and they never came back. But the Piina people, they told the enemies about the one remaining canoe. And so the enemies, they went over the mountain, over the other side of the hill, to the Piina people who remained. And they took those people and they brought them to their village, to their valley. And, they stayed. They didn't leave. And one night it was raining really, really bad, really hard. And they heard this crash up in the mountains. And the daughter of the chief of the Piina, she told the people there in this valley, Hanawawa, she said, my father told me that when they found land, because that rock that fell, the name of the rock was Me Aitopa Iho, great big rock on the side of the mountain. When that rock falls, that'll be a sign that we have reached land. Okay, and so that rock had fell, and so these people in Hanawawa and the chiefs and the Piina people, they knew that the Piina people who had left had found land. So they were happy. Many years later, like 100 years later, there was a ship that came to Hivaoa. And the ship had come from Napuka and Puka Puka Island and the Tuamotu Islands. And when the people on Hivaoa talked with the people, the sailors on the ship, by their names, they could tell that they were descended from the Piina people. And one man on that ship, he sent for his father, and his father was the grandson of the chief of the Piina people. And there's one other thing. All right, in Ana Island, in the world genealogies from about 1800, 1760 or so, there's a woman and her last name is Piina. And in their family, they have a tradition that this woman came from the Marquesas. But this is like before, this is like in ancient times. And the people who descended from that woman, they had this tradition that she came from the Marquesas, but they didn't know where she came from exactly. And one of them moved to Hivaoa, and he lives there, has like a little hotel. And he told me, I told him about the Piina people, because he was looking like, where is his name from in our genealogy? And he asked me if I knew any stories of the Piina, and I told him, well, yeah, there's this tribe from Hivaoa. And he goes, okay, that must be where she's from. And he said, the strange thing is, he's a stranger to Hivaoa. He's from the Tuamotu Islands. But he says, every time I come back to Hivaoa, it's like my home. I have a real love for this place. And it's probably because his ancestor, that woman, was from Hivaoa, from the Piina. One last thing. That enemies, Hanawawa, what was the name of their tribe? It was Piina. So the Piina and Ahau and Hanamenu and this enemies, they were descended like from two brothers or something. And they should have been like going over the hill and saying hello and loving one another. But they fought. And so, in life our choices either make us happy. We have choices to either make ourselves happy or to make ourselves sad. Ko hope te ireko.